and I welcome Sudhir Gupta ji, who is the speaker for the session today. And he'll be speaking in the area of artificial intelligence. And a very brief introduction about Mr. Gupta. Sir has an experience of about 40 years. He's a graduate of electrical engineering, has been working in very esteemed organizations from DCM Data Systems, has been Chief Operating Officer at Airtel, Madhya Pradesh, and then later he became Director Software Development Engineering at Comverse. Sir has been mentor to a number of business acceleration centers, and we are very thankful that Sir has been ready for a session today. So, Sir, over to you, and kindly start your session, sir.
Thank you, Aditya. Just a few opening comments, and then we'll get into the. I have a presentation which is there, so I'll hopefully. Aditya, how much time should we schedule?
So, sir, about 20 minutes, 20-25 minutes.
Okay, so I'll try and skip some of the slides because it will otherwise become too long. And Aditya, just remind me if I'm going overboard in the time, because I've switched my phone off, so I don't have a time thing in front of me right now.
Yes, sir.
So let me just a brief introduction, brief comment first. I like to think of myself, I'm no expert in generative AI. I'm just an evangelist. I like to think of myself as a citizen programmer and an evangelist in the field of AI, learning, and a student, of course. So happy to share whatever little I can from my own experience with the last couple of years in this field. And the other thing is that I made my last presentation about 6 months back. So when I was updating my presentation, I realized that the world has changed dramatically in the last 6 months. So I've never seen this kind of rate of change in my field. I've been in IT for 40 years now. So this kind of a step change or a paradigm shift that is happening and unfolding in front of our eyes is quite amazing, actually. So I hope to share some of the excitement that I keep feeling on every single day. And the last point I would like to make is that I've tried to use a lot of images to make it a little interesting, and also share my own personal experiences to make it more little lively. So let me start with the presentation straight off, because we have shortage of time that way. Let me share the presentation. Aditya, tell me if I'm able to share my screen properly here.
Yes, sir, I will.
Yes, I think I'm making some mistake again.
Okay. Sir, so we have a upside arrow present now. You have to click that.
Yeah, I did that.
After that, you will see the window, sir. Window option in the center.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, sir, if you have opened your
now
yes.
it's come. Now it's come.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yes, now starting, sir. Yes.
So, okay.
Yes, you're on. Yes, sir. You're on presentation mode.
Okay, wonderful. So I've tried to divide my presentation into four parts. A little bit on the evolution of how we have got to AI so far. A little bit on the technology side, something on the overview of how we are placed today, and then the use cases, of course. So I have, the way I like to look at it is that the very broad field is AI, which includes the earlier phases like expert system, fuzzy logic, and stuff like that. Then we went to the phase of machine learning, which is a subset of AI. Then we went to deep learning, which is the current excitement is all about deep learning in the last 10 odd years. And deep learning has now been effectively taken over by transformers. So we are in the age of, let me say, the fourth generation of AI and the age of transformers now. So this is the early phase, which I mentioned in the AI journey. Officially, the term AI was coined in the 1950s by John McCarthy at a very well-known meeting that took place in the US. Then we had some breakthroughs in the early phases, like the system called ELIZA, etc. Then we had expert systems. And then, as I mentioned, the neural networks or deep learning, they started in the 1980s, was a real sort of time. But they call it the AI winter in the earlier phases, when the excitement came and went because nothing really dramatic happened. But neural networks changed all that. Yeah. So that is the evolution. It's been there for 70 odd years now. But the last 10 years have been the real excitement has happened in the last 10 years. So these are the three people who set off the neural network, sort of, let's say, the tsunami that started with the neural networks. This is Lee Ya-Kun, Jeffrey Hinton, and Yoshua Bengio. So I'm sure you've heard of all of them. They're from the University of Toronto. And Professor Hinton, of course, all of them are very highly regarded figures. Lee Ya-Kun is the head of AI at Meta today. And Professor Hinton continues to be actively involved in AI. So this is the exciting phase, as I mentioned, started in about 1986 with Jeffrey Hinton and his team talking about backpropagation and neural networks. So as you can see, this what I find very interesting about these timelines is that the pace of growth has been accelerating very rapidly. In the first few years, it took a long time before it came to any sensible things, practical applications emerged here. So as you can see, it took 3 years for Lee Ya-Kun to build a 3-layer network in the beginning. And then he really made the first practical application when it started making a difference for character recognition, which was used by the Postal Department in the US to read the PIN codes here, or zip codes as they call them in the US. So it took a fairly long time for it to get to a practical stage in the first phase of neural networks. Then it started accelerating after that. Yeah. So then you had AxelNet, and then where I started my own journey was with VGG, which is the Visual Graphic Group in Oxford University, where they first released their first practical convolutional network, which made it open source, where people could start experimenting with it very, very nicely. So VGG still is ruling the roost in CNN. There are, of course, a lot of better networks have come. Convolution networks have come since then. But VGG was the founding stone or stepping stone for it to really take off. Yeah. So computer graphics is today a very sort of mature field in AI. And then the next breakthrough, I'm sure everybody has heard of about AlphaGo. And it was a world-changing moment, actually, because the first time that a computer program was able to defeat in the Go game, and Lee Sedol was the ruling champion at that time in the world. Why I consider this, or it's considered very important, the AlphaGo moment of 2000. In fact, there's a Netflix film, if some people would like to watch. You can watch the story of AlphaGo versus Lee Sedol game on Netflix there. It's a very fascinating documentary, actually. In any case, why it is so important is that the Oriental world, or the China and the Korea and so on, Go is almost like a religion. Like we have religion as a cricket in India, they have Go as a religion in China and Korea, or the Oriental world here. So this game actually convinced China and people. In fact, I'm told that Li Shipin, the Chinese premier today, I don't think I'm pronouncing his name properly, has started keeping a book on AI in his bookshelf after this particular thing happened. So it shook the Eastern world a lot after this particular moment, and they started realizing that there is an immense potential in this particular technology. Okay, so we are now coming to this next exciting phase, which we talked about, transformers, is the 4th generation. And as I'm sure many people are aware in this group, in 2017, the Google engineers released a paper called "Attention is All You Need," which sort of started the transformer journey. And then, of course, it started building from there. And in 2020, GPT-3 was announced. And then you had the DALE-E, which I'm sure people have used here, which is 2022. And then the real excitement started after in 2023 when ChatGPT was released. Yeah, so I'm sure almost everyone must have used ChatGPT by now, and it's quite amazing actually. So let's take a quick look at the technology part of it. In very simple terms, the transformer architecture is that you have encoders which encode your prompt or whatever input you're giving in. There is a model which runs on that, which is the whatever they talk about 175 billion parameters for ChatGPT, etc. And then you have decoders, which decode the model will provide. So if you give a prompt and you say you're putting it in generative mode, then it will try to complete the sentence or try to respond to your prompt there. So whatever the output of the model is decoded again and into human form and in English language and given to the as an output to the user. So it's the transformer architecture by itself is a little complicated, but in very simple terms, there is an encoder, decoder, and there is a model in between here. So you can see the evolution of ChatGPT or the generative AI in this graph, the way it has grown. So the parameters started jumping up from in my own journey in the last couple of years, I never imagined that you could reach a thing like 179 billion parameters. A model of this size was unbelievable there. And of course, I'm told that GPT-4 and then even talking of GPT-5 now will be even larger.
सुधीर जी जरा एक सेकंड, ये अतुल जी कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, we'll listen to
हाँ जी सर, हाँ जी, मैं इसको फिर शेयरिंग स्टॉप कर दूं क्या?
नहीं आप रहने दें सर, आप रहने दें
सर, क्योंकि
Please go ahead sir, please go ahead sir.
I just had a very fundamental question. जो आपने शुरू में that graphic which you showed where AI was the outer layer, then machine learning, then deep learning, and then transformers. And I've been curious about it. And I've been, thinking of asking this question, that AI which existed in, early on, right? Can you go back to that slide, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Second or third slide, I think you had, right? उसमें आपने एग्जांपल दिया, तो उस टाइम पे
ये वाली कह रहे हैं,
ये वाला correct, right? So right. AI in those days when it was evolving, right?
जी sir.
The base thing was still data, and so the machine learning was existing at that time. I mean, I'm just trying to think that evolution wise, has ML come after AI? I don't think that's the right thing to interpret, right? They kind of.
So let me try and answer. Have you completed or have I interrupted you needlessly?
No. My question is that AI and ML and deep learning, what I gather is that they kind of are intertwined, right? So question is कि जब AI शुरू में शुरू हुआ तो उस time पे ये concepts थे machine learning, deep learning के या नहीं थे?
No, they were not there at the early. They had a different technique of doing things there at that time. Okay. So technology has changed. The way AI was implemented, maybe the objective was similar in all the cases. But the way it was done was the breakthroughs came in terms of the way of how you handle the. आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं कि data is the fundamental premise on which everything is based.
Correct.
How you handle the data and how you interpret it, how you respond to the, how the systems learn from the data, how they digest it, that mathematical concept of the abstracts behind that have changed dramatically in the last couple of years.
Actually, sorry to interrupt everybody here. So what do I think? We were imparting AI in our application from so many years in our software application, software world. So through our code. So this is not new to the software industry, I guess. This is new to the people who are, are doing basics and then coming into this stream in IT and for the freshers kind of situation.
Got it. No, I think Sudhir ji answered the question, so I get it. Thank you very much.
Can I proceed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So since the large language models are the sort of in thing today or the hot items on the list right now, let's look at this a little more carefully here. So if now we are coming to the more practical part of it. Yeah. So there are these large language models. They have billions of parameters, etc., etc. What can I do with them, and how do I make use of them? So from a business perspective, you have three options actually today, and we'll delve into this a little bit more deeply little later. But the first option is where you can start your journey is that you can use models like ChatGPT, which are closed models. Because they're not open source. The weights are not shared, and you can use their APIs, build your application on top of that APIs, and then access the ChatGPT through your APIs and run your application here. So the downside, it works great, and I think a very large number of applications today actually exist based on the ChatGPT type and similar other closed models. But the downside is the cost can be prohibitive if you start using them at scale here. And the other big problem with the closed models is that the businesses are very scared of sharing the data. They are not interested in sharing the data. They want to keep the data confidential, which is a problem in the case of closed models there. When you use your API, you use them through the API. So the new thing, which is now becoming more, let's say, more interesting from a business perspective, and where a lot of businesses are spending a lot of time and energy today, and which is also fascinating because the open source, as you know, is a great story. We are in the 40th anniversary of open source today. Official 40th anniversary. They're celebrating it. The open source community is celebrating the 40th anniversary, and the open source community has stepped into the gap, let's say. And the models of like Falcon and Llama 2 is the hot topic right now. I've tried experimenting with fine-tuning Llama 2 myself, and it's quite unbelievable what you can do with the 70 billion parameter Llama 2 model there. And so what people are saying is, or the businesses are saying, is that we'll take Llama 2 type model, fine-tune them for our own application with our own data, and then host it on something like an AWS or other cloud service providers, and use it in a proprietary or confidential mode there. So that is the third option, essentially. So you can use open source models without fine-tuning, or you can fine-tune them and then use it for your own data. So this is the direction in which things are moving right now. So since fine-tuning is right now the direction in which most businesses seem to be moving, fine-tuning an open source model, I've just listed the steps. It's much cheaper today, fine-tuning an open source model. Hosting it is also very cost-effective. But the steps involved are not exactly trivial here. So you have to first create a data set, which is the real deal breaker is actually the data set here. I'm sure everybody in this group, in learned group, will appreciate that creating a data set and then curating it and using it properly is really a big deal by itself here. So this is the real challenge actually lies here. Then, of course, you might spend some time trying to choose which model is best suited for your purpose, which open source model is best suited for your purpose. Then, of course, fine-tuning it, and then you have to deploy it. Yeah. So there are 4 steps in this. And the first step is, I believe, the most difficult one. The rest of it is not straightforward, but relatively easier. Okay, I wanted to spend some time on hardware, but I think I'll skip these. I'll just show one slide and then skip the rest of them right now because it's shortage of time. So NVIDIA is as you are all aware, hardware is becoming a real.
Sir has raised hand, sir. Just a second, sir.
Sorry.
Atul, sir, you have a query, sir?
Yeah. So Sudhirji, between the Llama and the other open source, Falcon.
Yeah.
Which one have you seen in terms of which one is better or which one is more usable?
So just to shed a little more light, you might be aware that Llama 1 came first from Meta, but they didn't allow it for commercial use. They said you can use it only for academic purposes or research. Llama 2 changed the game. Sorry, Falcon changed the game. And Falcon came later from the UAE Institute, which itself is a story by itself.
Okay.
But Falcon made it commercially usable also as open source. So Llama 2 actually is now available. So Meta introduced Llama 2, which is a much better model than Llama 1. And I believe better than Falcon also, because it's now the hot topic at the moment. Everyone is running towards Llama 2. They made it commercially usable there.
Don't you think that at some point in time, Meta is going to start making money on this? Or do you think they will keep it like open source?
I think Zuckerberg is on record as saying that he will keep it open. They may make better models for their own proprietary use, which is not known to us right now. But he has a very strong, and Lee Yakun being there as the head of AI makes a difference, because he's an open source votary. And Zuckerberg himself is committed to open source. So I believe that they will continue to maintain, at least Llama 2 will continue to be in the open source domain. Anyway, they've released the weights right now, so they can't take it back in any case.
Got it. Sudhir, just one small request to all friends, I would say. So I think if you have you want to say something, you can write it on here also on the chat box, so that Mr. Gupta will be looking at it. He can also respond. So we can of course ask a question, or we can write also, so that others can also respond. So this is just a request. I think it will become many people can join the dialogue. I think Amit ji has a question. Amit ji, please say.
Amit, yes. Sir, we have been working in the oil and gas industry since last 25 years now, and everybody is talking about AI, but everything is manual. Most of the things are a little bit computerized or digitized, we can say. But exactly how to apply AI, because the same project, same work is being done. So there is no path forward. Means people are expecting that AI will do everything, but what AI will do, it's only today it's a fancy word, not practically used. So how this can be implemented in a like processes? Let's say we are doing construction, so we have fixed processes. So how we can implement, because all this chat GPT, other things are content writing, mostly they will give intelligent content, but how it can be implemented in the practical, let's say, construction process.
So I don't have an example for construction right now. We can discuss that.
This is just an example. Construction, I'm just giving an example.
I know, but I'm saying process industry, as you said, manufacturing sector, in a very general sense, I support a startup in my network. There's a startup which works on SCADA systems. I think that is the closest to what you are asking, actually. So I have presented in my use cases an example of how he's using SCADA in his own work here. How using AI for supplementing his SCADA activities there. I think that will help in terms of answering your question, and maybe I can try and answer a little more broadly at that time when we come to that slide here.
Sorry, sir. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Can I proceed, sir?
Yeah, please.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, sir.
I said, I was mentioning that NVIDIA, everyone knows NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is leading the race in terms of hardware and AI is hardware constrained. So next couple of years, there'll be a fascinating explosion of AI hardware also. And this is the latest product from NVIDIA that you can see in this picture, which is called Grace Hopper 200 here. So Grace Hopper 200 is a mixture of large memory, high bandwidth memory, and GPU, accelerated power. So this is supposed to be 1.7 times the capacity of the normal H100, which is the earlier generation of their this thing. So there's a huge activity going on in the hardware space as well, to keep up with the demand which is there. So in fact, you might be aware that all countries, including China, Saudi Arabia, they're spending billions of dollars in trying to pre-book the NVIDIA hardware so that they are not, they are the first, they have first right of being able to get hold of the hardware as compared to other people. There's a hardware acquisition race going on in the world at the moment. I'll skip the other slides on hardware because I think it will take too much time. So we'll come to the generative AI overview straight off. So I think this picture is close to my heart because it captures the excitement that is being created by ChatGPT. So they used to say software is eating the world, and now people are saying AI is eating software, and then the latest version of this is that transformers are eating AI. Just a little sort of a humorous way of putting it here. So I'm sure everyone is aware of this hype cycle story. And what is fascinating is that the AI itself is in different phases of in the hype cycle. The generative AI is at a different way. The computer vision and other applications are in a different, maybe in the plateau of productivity. Generative AI is in a different this thing. So it's quite interesting. The hype cycle is playing out in the AI itself in different parts of AI. So Gartner released a report just a few days back where they have placed generative AI at the peak of the inflated expectations, and it will go down. The hype will go down, which is already happening actually in a way. And as some of you pointed out, Amitji pointed out that a lot of excitement, but how to use it is not that obvious yet. So at least for practical use in the business world, it's not that simple there. So we'll cover that a little bit more, and hopefully the excitement will come down, and then it will come to a plateau of productivity later. The general prediction, as you can see from this particular slide, Gartner is saying it will take several years for it to play out actually, before it reaches the plateau of productivity level. Okay, so what is different about generative AI as compared to this thing, to the normal, what was happening earlier in the field of AI? Why is it catching on everybody's imagination so much here? So I've tried to sort of summarize the key differences or the key that how it is divergent as compared to the normal AI which was happening earlier. It's a natural language user interface. So they are now saying that English is the latest programming language. It is fluid as compared to rigid. This is not coined by me. This term is coined by Douglas Hofstadter, whom we'll talk about in a minute. And what as a normal programmer, it is fascinating for me that earlier programs were quite rigid in the sense that they would give a very predictable output here. But generative AI is neither controllable nor not predictable here. It can give you one output today, it will give you another output tomorrow. It may even learn and try to update its output after some time. So that is quite fascinating actually. That's a very diametrically different approach or situation as compared to earlier. So but at the same time, it's a productivity tool, and people are worried that it will displace jobs. So that may happen in a way. But at the same time, we have been having in the IT field itself, we have been having productivity tools being built layer upon layer after the last 40, 50 years. It's not in that sense, there's nothing very great or new about it. The other point about emergent properties is also quite fascinating here. So people who study complexity theory will be aware that complex systems display emergent properties in the sense that they behave in very interesting ways after at certain level of complexity. And I'm told that at about 70 billion parameters, the characteristic of a large language model suddenly becomes emergent here. And I've seen this myself. I've tried in my own testing. I have found that this does happen. That small models like 7 billion parameters really are not all that great. But when you come to 70 billion parameters, some strange things start happening. So you might have noticed that Google, I think in his Pichai in his presentation said that We trained it on one language, and it learned another language on its own. Yeah. So it's become sort of, so these are very strange properties which are not easy to comprehend. Yeah. The last and the most controversial thing about generative AI, which is set people's is set up for debate in a very big way, is it is sentient. Does it have emotions? Can it be considered as close to human, etc., etc., etc.? So I found the views of two very leading thinkers in this space very fascinating. One is Douglas Hofstadter, as I mentioned. Douglas Hofstadter is very well known for his great book called GEB, or Gothel, Escher and Back. So he's tried to do, he's a very, very, I find him a very fascinating person because he's a computer scientist, and he's been studying consciousness and the difference between computers and intelligence and consciousness for about 40 odd years now. So his views are, he says, I'm astounded by what the properties that GAI is displaying today. And I could never believe in my life that such things like this could happen here. And the other is Yuval Harari, who wrote this book, Homo sapien. There's a new term floating around now called techno sapiens. So humans will, with augmented AI, will start becoming what they are calling as techno sapien. So it's a fascinating discussion. It's for you to decide whether it's sentient or it can be considered as having consciousness or not. Yeah. But the discussion itself is quite fascinating. So this is the word which is doing the rounds today called improving on God's design here. So AI plus human is leading to a new breed of species, a new species called techno sapiens. For you to decide whether it makes any sense or not. There. So the other thing about generative AI is the impact, which is, I think this is most people accept this, that the quantum may differ from McKinsey to Arthur to Accenture and other people. Different people give different reports. But there's no doubt, and I look at it in a very simple way. They are saying that the growth rate can accelerate from about 3%, so $100 trillion world economy, which is growing at about 3%, can go to 8% growth rate if once the GAI starts playing out its role properly here. So it can have a huge booster in the GDP growth rate for the world and different countries who adopt it here. So different countries which adopt it more will probably grow faster as compared to other people. So I subscribe to this view for the simple reason that generative AI for the first time started affecting or started augmenting the productivity of the knowledge workers. Yeah. And as I think everybody will agree that the world today is 50% of the, so $100 trillion, $50 trillion is knowledge workers, the service sector economy. So earlier automation was being mostly in the manufacturing sector, and maybe in the knowledge worker space also there was productivity improvement, but this is generative AI is going to affect knowledge workers even more than the manufacturing sector. And that can lead to a boost in productivity and GDP growth rates. Okay. So while all the good things are there, the society is very deeply concerned about the impact it will have. Hello, can I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So job losses, all these are valid concerns, and we need to find ways of answering them. The job losses are a valid concern. Can it cause harm? Of course, it can cause harm. It's up to us to control it. Can it destroy the world? My hubris answer to people who say this is that we don't need AI to destroy the world. We'll do it ourselves there. We are quite capable of doing it ourselves. So climate change is one example there. Should it be banned? I think the most fascinating argument against it being banned was, in my opinion, by Mark Anderson. I'm sure everyone is aware of him. He wrote a very long essay explaining why prohibition of any kind of banning anything, as whether it is alcohol, whether it's prostitution, anything that society is trying to ban has actually come back and hit it back in a very different way. It never worked. So banning is not a solution. You controlling it, should it be regulated? Of course, it should be regulated. But how? It should be lightly regulated so it doesn't stop innovation at all. The other things which I find quite fascinating, the HR people are worried that how to deal with a man-machine workforce. And I'm sure you're aware that bots are already a part of our workforce today, whether we like it or not. So there are some companies which say 50% bots and 50% humans there. So HR departments are struggling with how to deal with a mixed man-machine workforce. I think the legal community is worried what happens in the case of AI making mistakes and causing accidents here, for example, so this is already a matter of great concern and needs to be thought about how to deal with it. So if autonomous vehicle were to cause an accident, there's a very famous case in the US which is sort of very controversial. We don't have time to delve into it, but the fact of the matter is it's a very open question. If an autonomous vehicle were to cause an accident, who's responsible there? Okay, so these are genuine issues which need to be thought. The society has to find a way of dealing with them. So this is very close to my heart because, of course, we as proud Indians, we all want to see what role GI can play in how India can benefit from that. And Ajay Kumar, I'm sure you're aware of Ajay Kumar, the ex-defense secretary and now emeritus professor at IIT Kanpur. He wrote a very nice article, and all this is shamelessly plagiarized from his article. So his estimate is that out of 550 GI startups in the world, India is 60. So India is already playing an important role in the GI space. This is an interesting piece of data. World Economic Forum is estimating that the AI will displace 75 million jobs, but it will add 133 million new ones there. So I subscribe to this view that any new technology does cause disruption, and we have to make it a fair transition, as I like to call it, so that the people who are affected are able to give them create upskilling opportunities for them and try to reduce the pain. You can't stop it, but you can make the transition smoother, and it will create more jobs. So while it may displace some jobs, it will create new ones. That I'm sure people may have different views on this, but this is what WEF is estimating. So this is another interesting piece of data that, as per Mr. Ajay Kumar, LinkedIn reported in 2020 there were 105 million AI job postings here. So I think the data is very clear that AI talent is in high demand, commanding very high salaries, and there's a real shortage of AI talent in the world. Huge shortage of AI skills in the world, but everyone acknowledges that. I think what set off a furore is that Netflix recently posted an AI job offering a salary of $1 billion there, unprecedented in the IT field. You have heard of $1 billion salaries for a CEO level positions, but a normal programmer or an AI IT person getting a $1 million salary is not a small amount there. Okay, huge shortage of AI skills worldwide. Yes, sure. How India can, so what Ajay Kumar is saying is that India can aim to become the global supplier of AI talent here. So we have all the natural advantages. We have already done this in IT in the last so many years, and we should not miss out in this particular, the next phase that is unrolling. And he says that AI is, of course, skilling is the key. We need to skill our workforce in this particular area. And his concern is that we are not doing enough in this space. So for example, he mentioned that only 20% of 6,000 engineering colleges in India offer AI courses. So he's saying we should have AI universities, AI colleges, AI specialized courses for AI, and of course, upskilling courses of different types. In fact, as I mentioned, Falcon was made by a university in UAE, which is basically AI university, which is probably one of the only one of its kind in the world. Okay, let's come to the most interesting thing, which is the generative AI use cases now. So use cases, GPT use cases, as someone mentioned earlier, was you can do content creation, you can do question answering, you can do coding, and maybe others also. So you can program chat, you can use that chat GPT type like large language models. Sorry. So in content creation, trying to share a personal example. This is my grandson on the extreme left, Rianj, who's 8 years old. He was asked to read out an Independence Day poem. So my daughter-in-law sent me a WhatsApp image saying, "I've written this. Can you get it? Try and improve it here." And I'm sure everyone in the group has used Chat GPT type products, and my favorite, of course, is Bard. So I asked Bard. The way of doing it is also it's interesting. I just uploaded the image, asked Bard to first read the data, convert that image into a text. So it first converted the poem into a text for me, and then I asked it, "Can you improve this poem?" And then here's the answer that it gave. So, and my daughter-in-law further improved it or whatever she did with it, but she used some part of this. And finally, my grandson read this out in his school, and we as normal human beings, we have started using. It's just an example from my own personal experience. We have started using, and I use Bard all the time to help me in my programming and coding here. It does a great job of giving me pseudocode here. So I think it's become a part of our daily lives now for all of us. And coming to the business scenario now. So I was in Australia for the last couple of months, and I attended the meet of this company called Snowflake, which itself is a very interesting company. And it's one of the 3 AI companies that Warren Buffett has invested in. It had a blockbuster IPO some time back. And they call themselves a data cloud company. So I won't go into details of the stack that is building up in the cloud itself for AI. But what I found very interesting in that meet was it was very heavily attended there. So there were about 1,000 people in the room there. And the presenter asked how many people have used ChatGPT. The entire hall, and there was not a single person whose hand which did not go up there. Then he asked how many organizations or where in your workplace have you actually implemented ChatGPT in a business setting here. There were very few hands which went up there. So as I like to say, rhetoric versus reality, as Amit also mentioned, that while we are all excited about it, putting it to business use is not trivial. And obviously everyone understands that data is the real issue. And we'll try and look at that a little more carefully as we go along. So I found this very interesting report which came out just 2 days back from Standard & Poor's 500. They surveyed their companies in their list, and they gave a picture which is a little more rosy than I personally am convinced is the case. But in any case, I'm presenting right from the report here. So they say that 69, they're calling AI pioneers which have put AI ML in production, and AI explorers which are actually in the pilot or proof of concept phase there. So they say in their sample, they found that 70%, nearly 70%, 69% companies have actually put AI in production there. I find that a little difficult to digest. But in any case, that is their data. And if it's the case, then it's interesting here. So you will see that this is the breakup in terms of the size of the company, and you will see the larger companies is actually ahead in the race here, which actually makes sense. And also the fact that all the regions in the world they surveyed, the North America, Asia Pacific, Middle East, it's quite strong here. It's more than 50%. So this is also very interesting that all sectors they surveyed, and oil and gas, Amit mentioned, they are saying that 71% of the companies they surveyed have actually put it in production there, which I'm not sure how accurate that data is. But in any case, it's very interesting. What I found very interesting is that the manufacturing space is actually leading as compared to, say, finance or healthcare, the services sector, life sciences, and media, which is a great hype today because the media industry is up in arms. You have heard about the famous strike by the Bollywood workers, industry associations. So they are only at 55% compared to, say, information technology. Information technology, of course, makes sense. But oil and gas, 71% is quite interesting here. So anyway, this data needs to be validated, but it's quite interesting that as per their survey, there is already being put in production in many places there.
So Sudhir, actually, if I can add over there, I think it's also a little bit of a irony that, many of these companies are now, just to avoid embarrassment, right? They are, because see, like you said, AI has been there for decades in different forms, right? Ab jo chatbot bhi use kar raha hai, eventually behind the chatbot there is some algorithm, some data, so they are now saying ki, "Arey, hum to AI use kar rahe hain."
You're right. You're right. You could be absolutely on the dot there. Right?
So manufacturing, we have seen for many years, they have been actually in a way, manufacturing has been a pioneer in, using algorithms, right?
Correct.
In assembly lines and everything, right?
Correct.
I mean, even in quality checking for that matter, right? So now they're kind of just waking up and saying, "Nahi, hum to AI use karte hain." And, so that's also a sentiment which I see.
Understood, sir, and agreed.
Sudhir ji.
Anji, sir.
Sir, I think we can now move to more discussions. It will be nice, sir.
So I'll just conclude in a few minutes and then we can move on. Okay. So I'll skip these slides. This was interesting. I just pointed out that people are going from cost drivers to revenue drivers. They are looking at AI for increasing their revenue. So यूज केस के अंदर एक एचआर का एग्जांपल मैंने दिखाया था जो मेरी स्टार्टअप कर रहा है, मेरे इसको मैं मेंटर करता हूँ. That is in the recruitment process. I'll skip the details. This I mentioned earlier about the SCADA application. So this startup is actually using AI as a decision-making system. The data they get is from a hydroelectric plant, and he's shown an example of the way he's used AI, where you get a response back. You ask a question from the data, and it gives you a response back by analyzing the data. Another startup that I support has actually started using it for KYC of their customers, etc. Okay, done, sir. Thank you. So I'll stop the sharing now, and we can move to anything else that is required.